Errol Spence says he told Al Haymon in the hospital, "The only fight I want is Terence Bud Crawford." What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red Sports. Let's talk about it. All right, y'all. So, where is the bud? Errol Spence says when he was in the hospital, he told Al Haymon the only fight that he wanted was Terence Bud Crawford. And I wanted to give my 2 cents on what the big homie, the Truth, had to say. Alright, so is that factual or captual?
You don't know.
Errol Spence says that after the accident, he was out for a while, a couple of weeks, and Al Haymon came to see him in the hospital. This was all on a podcast. You can go back and watch it or whatever, go do your thing. But he said he was in the hospital. Al Haymon came to him. They had a conversation, and during this conversation, Errol says that people were telling him, I guess Errol was still out of it, so he kind of remembers some and kind of don't remember the whole thing, but people were telling him the only fight he was mentioning to Al Haymon was Terence Bud Crawford. And, I think that's kind of crazy because if you think back all the way to 2019, it seems like, they weren't pushing, they were pushing the line for the Terence Crawford fight, but there was a lot of pushback. Bob Arum was still involved. Terence Crawford was still signed to Top Rank Boxing, and it didn't seem like at the time that fight was even realistic.
That's a bad young motherfucker.
But now we're in 2023 and we finally got the fight. Should it have taken, this many years to actually get that fight together? If this is what he was asking for in 2019, I mean, he was going straight to his boss in 2019, telling him, like, this is the only fight I want.
He's a great fighter. It's just me. I broke another great father wheel, and I broke him down mentally, physically, and I came out on top.
But you got to remember, he fought Danny and Ugaz since the car accident. I think there's one more in there, but I can't remember it. But I do remember Danny, and I do remember Ugaz being there. Of course, Ugaz, he was the last fight. But should it have taken this many years for Al Haymon to actually be like, we have to only pursue this one fight. This is the fight that my champion wants. This is the fight that the people want. This is the fight that needs to be made for boxing to try to re-solidify itself as the #1 combat sport out there. And it just goes to show that the fighter isn't always the one who gets what he wants. Even though everybody says, well, these fighters have been, padding their stats or they've been only going after certain fights. It's really not the fighters all the time. Now, sometimes it might be the fighters saying, hey, I don't want this fight just yet. Maybe we can let it marinate and get more money out of it if we wait a little while. But I think in this specific situation, it's more of Al Haymon not wanting to do business with Top Rank when it came to a fight of this caliber. Because you got to remember, whoever has the rights to this fight is going to make the most money. If it was Top Rank and PBC, well, whatever money was generated off the fight was going to most likely be split down the middle. And I feel like one company wanted full rights to the fight. Not only that, they only wanted one TV company involved. With everything being unsure, they were speaking a couple of weeks ago when they was talking about the fight just now being announced, and they were saying that the rematch clause could only be placed into effect if the fight does well. They were still unsure if this fight was going to sell well. But I think with the Ryan Garcia fight doing well, Ryan Garcia-Gervonta Davis fight doing well, that they feel comfortable enough, as long as it's just them, PBC, with their hands in the pot. They feel comfortable enough to make the fight at this point.
100% honest. I gave him that when we was in negotiations to make the fight happen. A lot more than our first bet. Yeah, I know. Y'all seen the video.
Million.
You know what I'm saying? To make the fight happen, I gave him a lot more than the side bet. So,
And I think that it was Terence Crawford as well. You know, I think that Terence Crawford, you know, just like PBC, wanted to make sure he's getting everything he can get off this fight. That way, in case he does have to retire, which I think he most likely will. You know, he might fight one more time after the Errol Spence fight, and if he does, it's more than likely going to be the rematch. But I think if Errol beats him bad enough, then he'll most likely go into retirement. So him, just like PBC, they wanted everything that they can get off that fight. Bud wanted everything he can get off that fight. Errol Spence just wanted the fight. It seems like Errol kind of got trapped into having to fight some extra fights just because everybody involved wasn't ready to make the fight. Now, I could be wrong. I could be right. You know, it's up to your personal opinion. But, you know, me personally, I do feel like that Errol wanted the fight. Errol has been talking about this fight for a long time. But it's other parties that were involved that were stopping the fight from happening. And I blame some of it, too, as well on PBC Boxing, just not pushing hard enough for the fight to be made. Listen, if a promotional company wants something to happen, it's going to happen. You know, Bob Arum wasn't the problem. They could have negotiated a decent enough split between both camps to where they could have made the fight happen even with Bob Arum involved. But once again, there would have been 2 TV networks they would have had to split the money with. There would have been 2 promotional companies they had to split the money with. And boxing is a very selfish game.
If you know how the matrix works, then you can win. Just like if you know and understand finance, you can make a lot of money in a recession.
They normally only want one promotional company involved, especially when it's huge dollar signs. And normally, the one promotional company is going to make the bulk of the money. The one TV company is going to make the bulk of the money. So I feel like PBC was being a little selfish and not giving Errol Spence exactly what he wanted. You know, it is what it is at this point. They made him go through those other fights, and he made a lot of money off those other fights. Don't get me wrong. He got some exposure. Perhaps he shouldn't have went straight from the accident into the Terence Crawford fight, but he was calling for that himself. So why not? You know, he won his fight after the accident, so why should it matter? I mean, he actually won the fight he went into after the car accident. So I don't feel like it was Errol Spence holding himself back or not wanting to make the fight or not asking for Terence Crawford. I think it was some selfishness on behalf of PBC and Al Haymon. I think it was some let's wait and see on behalf of PBC and Al Haymon. Let's not just throw Errol Spence in there with Terence Crawford right after an accident on behalf of PBC and Al Haymon. And it was some, you know, selfishness as well on behalf of Terence Bud Crawford, you know, wanting to get more money, not wanting to split with Bob Arum himself. I don't think it was just PBC not wanting to split with Bob Arum. I think Terence Crawford didn't want to split with Bob Arum as well, even though he was the highest paid boxer on Top Rank. For some reason, something happened in the past few years to where he turned on Bob and he just didn't want to deal with him anymore. So I would never say that it was Errol Spence who didn't want to make the fight or who was ducking the fight or, you know, none of that. If he was asking for this in his hospital bed, then it's what he wanted. You know, you got to blame the other parties involved, Al Haymon, PBC, Terence Bud Crawford, for not, you know, pursuing that fight as hard as they possibly could. If that's what they wanted as well, that's what they should have made happen. And we shouldn't have had to wait all the way to 2023 when he was asking for this in 2019. Y'all let me know what y'all think about all that down in the comment section below. The like button for me. Share, subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms. That Facebook, that Instagram, that YouTube, that Twitter. But you're more than likely to get a response on the tube. So holler at me over there. If you want to collabo, feature a product or your channel on my channel, then hit my Gmail. It is aflackofcards@gmail.com. And we are mad. Where is the bud? Where is the bud?
Shine like a gold bar in the crown.
it's a patrol car. Louis Keys finna set the city on fire. Chicks wanna give me time like a dope chart. KY Mozart, money like a loan shark. OJ in the cup, rolling like a go-kart. Okay, throw it like you try and get paid. Then throw it like you try and get a raise. Hating on me, don't be trying it today. Eyes metal on your head like you try and get a fade. See, I roll with some real Louisvillians. Buy money like we had a deal with Cecilia. I said, I'ma come through in the old school bucket. Shove in the back, license plate, say Kentucky. Louisville slugger, knock it out the park. See them young players on the grind after dark. What's up? Louisville slugger, swing for the fence in the old school thing with the tents getting bent. With my old two bang, fingerprints getting rinsed. Got a old school dame and the lips got a grip. Said my whole crew bang, hit the strip for the grip. Hitting Pro Tools, bang, real hits, batter zip. Okay, there's nothing you can tell me. Since I got a mouth full of Notre Dame helmets. Girls say I'm selfish, players think I'm wealthy. So I prove them both right. Player, get your flow tight. You should let me ghost ride, imitate my whole life. Louis Keys, so tight, I know. I said I'ma come through in the old school bucket. Shove in the back, license plate, say Kentucky. Louisville slugger, knock it out the park. See them young players on the grind at the dark. Said I'ma come through in the old school bucket. Shove in the back, license plate, say Kentucky. Louisville slugger, knock it out the park. See them young players on the grind at the dark. What's up, Louisville slugger? It is what it is. Don't talk about my crib, you ain't being world leader. They love me in the hood cause I been spitting game. They love me in the hood since I did switching lanes. I knock it out the picture frame when I entertain. I never been the lane, better not let me in the game. Okay, I put it on my back. There'll be a KY finna put it on the map. I said I'ma come through in the old school bucket. Shove in the back, license plate, say Kentucky. Louisville slugger, knock it out the park. See them young players on the grind at the dark. I said I'ma come through in the old school bucket.